Welcome in. Belly up, have a seat, and grab a drink as we talk some Wingman fantasy football. Welcome into another edition of Wingman Fantasy Football, the League Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Furley. And as always, I'd like to thank all of you, or any of you who may be watching this show. And I am joined by my good pal over here, Mr. B, a.k.a. Team B.
I'm Cuban B. Yes, Cuban B.
How are you doing today, Bernie?
I am doing good and bad all at the same time.
I have a feeling I've been keeping an eye on the scores, and we'll get into it. You can cry on my shoulder if you need to. It's okay.
Thank you, sir.
All right, guys. This is episode 92, Week 1's 2-point conversation. And in this show, we will be going over some player news, go over the studs and duds so far through the Sunday afternoon games of Week 1. We will have our very first 2-point conversation where we will discuss the weekend's NFL action, and we will get you a head start on our early waiver wire thoughts. So that being said, guys, actually, before we get into the news, let's make sure that everybody is in the room. Wingmen assemble! All right, now that everyone is here, let's get into the player news for the day. All right, CD Lamb was activated. From the commissioner exempt list, and he was active for Week 1, although it was a little hard to see him on the field today. Josh Allen injured his non-throwing hand thumb. He was doing the, I forget what quarterback used to do that, where they would hand the ball off with the opposite hand and kind of look funny. He was doing that today because he couldn't hand the ball off with his left hand. We have Christian McCaffrey, as of the last I've seen, is listed as questionable for his game later tonight on Monday night. David Njoku left Sunday's game early with an ankle injury. Jamar Chase was active on Sunday despite not coming to terms on a new contract before the start of the season. And his teammate, T. Higgins, sustained an injury late in the week during practice, and he was inactive for Sunday's Week 1 game. Also, we had Russell Wilson was inactive for Week 1, making way for Justin Fields. I don't know how many times we have to play that drop this season, so I'm putting it in there right now. And we have Jordan Love. Sustained a knee injury on the second to last play on Friday night's game in Brazil. It is not expected to be a long-term injury, but he is expected to miss a few weeks, and Katie's King George injury woes continue.
Oh, no.
All right, guys, now it is time for some studs and duds. All right, we're going to start off right off the bat. Let's start with the good news. Well, it depends here. As I look at this, it's bad news for me, but good news for the league here. We're starting off with Devon the Man. Achan had 19.5 points, and he did it all in the air as he only had 25 yards rushing. He did get a goal line touchdown, however, and he did have 7 receptions for 75 yards. His teammate, who was dealing with his own sorts of drama prior to the game, we'll get into that in the 2-point conversation. Tyreek Hill finished the day with 22.5 points as he too had 7 catches, but his totaled 130 yards and he had a bomb touchdown. On to our next stud, Kai Fairbairn, kicker for the Texans, had 17 points, a monster day with 3 50-plus yard field goals, and James Conner for the Arizona Cardinals had 17.8 points with 83 yards of total offense, 3 receptions, 1 touchdown, and 1 2-point conversion. What other studs do we have out there, Mr. Bernie?
Well, we had A.J. Brown coming in with a 20.40 point total. He looked like he was in midseason form despite not really having a lot of preseason action going on. Mr. Alvin Kamara with a 19.8 solid day. They were running all over that team to not be named Carolina. But Mr. Lamar Jackson doing what Lamar Jackson does, coming down to the wire with 27.12 points. And Aaron Jones, 17.9 on that studly man.
All right. Also in the in the studs category, We have a defense here. The Minnesota Vikings defense put a whooping on the Giants and Daniel Jones as they had 17 points where they accrued 5 sacks, 2 interceptions, and scored a defensive touchdown by our old favorite safety / linebacker from the Dolphins, Van Ginkel, one of the best names in football. Also, we have Stephon Diggs. This was a pity. Sorry, I'm cracking here. This was a pity stud as they were just giving him the touchdowns on goal line work. He was like a glorified tight end today with 6 catches for 33 yards, getting 2 touchdowns to score 18.9 points. And Xavier Worthy.
We're not worthy! We're not worthy!
Xavier Worthy had 19.8 points with 68 total yards, including 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground and 1 in the air. And Ramondre Stevenson, in the biggest upset of the week, contributed with 126 total yards, scoring a touchdown on the ground to score 20.1 points. What other studs do we have on our list?
Wow, we got a quarterback coming out shooting. Mr. AR Anthony Richardson, 28.08. Baker Mayfield, another quarterback, but he's been here for a minute, 29.66 points. J.K. Dobbins running for a new team, I believe, 21.4 points. Stud. Jaden Daniels, is he a rookie? Another rookie on this list, 28.16 points. And my man, Ken Walker, Texas Ranger, 17.9 points.
Nice. All right, now you can't have all good news on Sunday. Trust me, I've seen it. I lived it. We're going to get into the dud category, starting off with a couple of Spidey players as Travis Kelce had only 4.9 points on Thursday night, followed by, of course, I should have known better after all of our discussions, roller coaster man himself, Calvin Risky, was a risk. Scored only 6.5 points because Levis just liked throwing at underhand passes to the opponent. It was very disgusting to watch. And Chris Olave, with all those points being scored for New Orleans, he was not involved as he only could get 2.9 points. And Mark Andrews, a star tight end, only scored 2.4 points. But to the credit of, I think, King George, I'm not actually positive, that Mark Andrews was not in the starting lineup. What other duds do we have on our list, Team B?
This is a sad one for me to say because I've been high on him. Mr. Rome Odunze, 1.90 for the dud. Kirk Cousins, oh my gosh, it hurts my heart in Atlanta. Kirk Cousins is a 10.20. We got another Kirk, Captain Kirk here. Christian Kirk, 3.5 points. And then Caleb Williams couldn't get that ball to Rome enough. So it's 7.22 for Caleb today.
I have to say, you were worried about Odunze and he had a bad day, but you did not put him in your lineup. You didn't have that question, but I thought you might have that question, and you steered away. That was the way to go.
Yeah.
All right, on to some other duds here. We have Michael Pittman for the Colts. He, too, could not get in the action of these long bomb receptions as he could only get 5.1 points. Evan Ingram, who last year was peppered with targets, could only muster 1 point. DeAndre Swift, also for the Bears, another offensive Bear player to dud today, only had 5 points. And Dalton Kincaid, we thought he was going to show up big, but he did not, getting only 1.6 points. What other duds do we have?
So let's continue with the little rookie slump on the dud side. Marvin Harrison Jr. had 1 point today. He drafted pretty high to get 1 point there, buddy. I'm just saying. Mr. Chuba Hubbard, 1.4 points today. And Mr. McBride, wait for the drop.
I'm not going to play it when he has a dud game. If he has a stud, I will put it on there for him.
That's totally understandable. Mr. McBride only had 5.5 points. And another Atlanta Falcon, Mr. Drake London. If the quarterback's going to be a dud, you're probably going to be a dud too, with a 2.5 a point total today.
You know what?
Go ahead.
I made a mistake here. Marvin Harrison, I think, actually had 0.9 points, not 1.0 points. So he had the virtual goose.
All right, so let's continue here with your next one up after Drake London. Here.
All right, we got Justin Herbert had only 10.36 points in a victory for the Los Angeles Chargers, and once again, he was not started. Most of these duds are managers really good of not starting these players, and these are questionable guys. Javonte Williams. Oh my gosh. Denver looks so bad. I'm hoping Seattle's defense is a monster, and that was the reason. Javonte Williams can only muster 2.8 points, but I will say he was the best at blocking on blitz pickups today. Congratulations. Too bad there's not points for that because he got every single blitz pickup done well today. Gus Edwards only got 3.3 points in juxtaposition to his running back mate, J.K. Dobbins, who's on the stud list, and DK Metcalf. Oh, I've got something to say about him later when we get into the 2-point conversation. DK Metcalf could only muster 4.4 points as he was blanketed by Patrick Surtain II. And once again, Surtain takes Metcalf's lunch.
Wow. And then we go to Jackson Smith-Njigba, 2.9 points. Scary Terry McLaurin, 2.7 points. Thought that offense was going to be a little bit more high-powered with him. Mr. Mozart on the Dolphins, 2.9 points, and Deontay Johnson with another 2.9 points. It was a Dudley affair for those two.
All right, guys. So you heard some studs and duds, and you're like, where? There's some names missing. Well, I'm going to tell you, we've got some guys who leveled up. They are in our new segment, the Mecha Studs.
Mega Studs.
All right, in our Mecha Studs category, Saquon Bark. Oh, you're going to recognize a couple of these names here, Team B. I'm sorry to say this. We'll go into that on our Wednesday show a little more when it comes to our fantasy matches. But nonetheless, the NFL-wise, Saquon Barkley making his Eagles debut had 32.2 points with 130 total yards and 3 touchdowns. As the only time they went for the tush push, they fumbled the snap or got sacked. I forget what it was. It went backwards. And they're going to have Saquon Barkley be their goal line back, I think, for a lot of the season. You asked earlier how much Kelsey makes a difference. And in the first time they tried it, it was a much different outcome. We also have Jaden Reed in that same game on Friday night, had 31.1 points as he had 170 total yards and 2 touchdowns with 1 on the ground and 1 in the air. Oh, and Josh Allen had 33.18 points against the Cardinals today, contributing for 4 touchdowns with 2 rushing and 2 passing. There was even 1 called back on a penalty. And the Chicago defense taking on the Banana Man. Will Levis scored 20 points, getting 3 sacks, 2 interceptions, a fumble recovery, a block kick, and 2 touchdowns, 1 from the block kick and 1 from an interception from a behind-the-head, over-the-shoulder pass for no reason. And then we have Joe Mixon, who was the workhorse of workhorses, as he had 25.3 points with 30 carries today, 178 total yards, and a rushing touchdown. And my man, potentially my savior, we'll see, we're not there yet, Brandon Aubrey, the first kicker taken off the board, did not disappoint, getting 21 points with 2 field goals of over 40 yards and 2 field goals of over 50 yards. And they actually went for they were contemplating going for a 71-yard field goal at the end of the first half, but they couldn't pull the trigger on that. And I would have loved to see that. We need to, with these type of guys, I think we need to add the extra point for 60-yard kicks. We've been seeing a lot more of those lately.
Yeah, that NFL record is just going to keep moving back and back and back.
All right, guys, it is now time to get into our very first installment of the 2-point conversation.
Is Jack Del Rio going to go for 2 here,
He's going for 2.
The Raiders will go for 2 and the probable victory with 47 seconds left.
If you don't make this, you lose. If you make it, you're in a position to win.
Wingman Fantasy Football's 2-point conversation.
And it's good! Oh my goodness!
All right, in the 2-point conversation, we're just going to talk about the games that we saw today, and including the games from the weekend, midweek from last week here. So why don't you start us off, Mr. Bernie, with the games that we're going to talk about today.
All right, first game on the docket for me is going to be the Pittsburgh-Atlanta game, and that was a hometown game for me here, and Atlanta lost this game. Pittsburgh 18, Atlanta 10. It was a rough one. It seemed to be a defensive stout game for Pittsburgh. First quarter, all I got was 2 field goals, and then an Atlanta interception really kind of sealed it for that first quarter. The good thing about this game, what I really saw was that the Atlanta defense didn't allow anybody in the end zone. So all 18 points were field goals. And I believe that is either a record or tied for a record. Let me see. I got it in my notes here. It is the only kicker to make 6 field goals without a miss in a week 1 game in NFL history. He's tied with John Carney for the Chargers in 1993. So it was a tough one. Then the second quarter, kind of the same. It was a field goal for Pittsburgh, a punt for Atlanta, a punt for Pittsburgh, and then a touchdown for Atlanta, which that touchdown was Kyle Stinky Pitts. And
Yeah.
it was good to see him. They were reminding us in the broadcast that his rookie season, he was 1,000-yard reception tight end in his rookie season, which was a big deal. So hopefully he can get that turned on with somebody, if it's Kirk or if it's Penix throwing him the ball. Then we got a field goal to end that second quarter from Pittsburgh. Really, that what I saw in that first half was a lot of JJ Watt disruption, and it didn't stop there. It continued.
TJ Watt.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Who did I just say?
You said as a fat older brother, but yeah.
Oh yes. It's too many watts.
What?
Yes, TJ. So it was hard to see, and it was a couple times where I saw that Pitts had a little chip block, and the chip block didn't do anything, and it was like it was just getting around there. TJ was just getting around there. So we had a couple more punts coming in, an interception in the second half for Atlanta, and then field goal for Pittsburgh. So it was an ugly game. Bijan did show some sparks. Drake didn't really have anything to say. Kirk was just off of his timing. He had one really questionable throw that I saw where it was an interception, and it's just where were you looking? I don't know if you saw what you saw, but otherwise he took his time. He had Pitts was wide open for his touchdown catch, and I was surprised that he had enough time to check back down to see Pitts. Pitts just ran the left side in the end zone, waving his hands. It's like, I'm wide open. And a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, and I'm going to give him some props because I have to. He's on my team fantasy-wise, and he's on my team locally-wise. He took his time, and he got him the ball. He didn't make it a difficult catch that should have just been an easy catch, and he made it an easy catch, which some quarterbacks just don't. They see an open receiver, and they're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? This guy's wide open. And they try to throw
Fire at him, yeah.
Yeah, and then it's just an off pass. So that was a good thing to see. It was a good thing that the defense didn't let them score touchdowns. So all in all, a loss, bad game, but not end of the world.
So last year, Atlanta's defense, they were good against running backs because they didn't give up hardly any rushing touchdowns. I think it was like before like week 12 before even anyone scored a rushing touch. They lost a lot of those games, but like they're like a bend don't break defense, I guess. But they bend a lot, and it equals 6 field goals, and they couldn't score today. And my theory is that Kyle Pitts was so wide open in the corner of end zone because his pits are so stinky that everyone gave him some space.
Yes, there it is. And then just a little note on Justin Fields, who started the game. And it looked like the same Justin Fields. He didn't look as explosive. You know, he's in a new place, and he's got a lot of turmoil going on in the offseason and stuff. But he did get a sack. He's known for those sacks, and I think he was scrambling backwards, and he lost a good amount of yards on that sack. So he didn't lose the game for them, but he didn't necessarily win that game for them. So if you're on the waiver wire looking and, oh, wait a minute, did you pick up Justin Fields like early this morning?
Yeah, I was going to do it last night, but I did this morning.
Yeah, I actually was looking. I went in and I looked and see if he was there, and he wasn't there. And I was like, oh, I bet Michael got him.
I need a third quarterback. I didn't have one yet. So
I figured.
It's an easy call. So, all right. So it sounds like I had the game on in the corner, but it was I wasn't watching every single play because Bijan wasn't getting the ball enough. It wasn't exciting enough. Every time I looked, I was seeing TJ Watt, like you said, either running to the backfield, either causing a penalty or creating one. Either he was doing it or he was making the offense do one. Every time I saw him, I was like, yeah, he's pumped up. Oh, going backwards or forward, like dead ball plays.
If it wasn't for two, I think it was two penalties, an offsides on him and
Oh, that offsides! I did see that when we had a big sack or fumble or something, and they had to call it back.
He would have had like 2 strip sacks, and it was and 1 recovery. It was bad. He was really tearing them up on that left side. So Atlanta's got some work to do on that offensive line.
So I got a question for you. Like I said, since you watched that game, let's move to the other side of the field there with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Okay. One of the players I had now again, Atlanta's a much better one. They were a good rushing defense last year. I think their defensive personnel has greatly improved this year. Yeah. How would you rate the work and or workloads between Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris?
Oh, I think it was definitely a heavy lean for Najee.
That's what I saw at a glance, but I didn't stare at it. All right.
Yeah. Jaylen was he was in there, but he wasn't featured. I mean, he was a clear number 2 back. It wasn't a 50-50 for sure. It wasn't a 60-40. I mean, it might have been an 80-20 as far as just the eyesight watching the game. So Najee did okay. He didn't do bad, but they just couldn't get in that end zone. Whether that was play calling, which I don't really think it's play calling. I think it's execution because Tomlin's good with that. He's not a bad play caller. So, all
right, let's get on to our next game here. What else we got?
All right, what else we got here? We can go into. Sorry, I get my notes.
That's all right.
We go into this one. This one was a tough one for me to watch. Chicago and Tennessee, and I only say it was tough because I wanted more from the quarterback. So Chicago with 24, Tennessee with 17. It was an exciting game to watch. Did you see anything that you liked out of this game? Did you watch this game?
Liked is hard to say. I watched this game intently, and I realized afterwards, like, why am I watching this game? But that's the game I had in front of me. With the other ones kind of on the side. I was watching that one because I was looking for, I guess, hoping for Calvin Ridley. I don't know why I had it in front of me. It's the first game I put on, and that's when I caught my attention. No, I watched it quite a bit, and the one thing I noticed right off the bat. I talked up, and it doesn't mean it's going to be wrong season long, but I said I like Spears as much as Pollard. It was all Pollard. Pollard was the one. Yeah. Spears came in just to spell him. Pollard did well. Spears didn't do bad. It was just literally an opportunity thing. They both, I think, ran semi-equally, but it's hard to even see that when one guy's getting 15 carries before the other guy gets 4 carries, give or take. I don't know the exact math, but it was definitely 70-30 and that was just with the spells. Like the Pollard was getting the rhythm, and Spears just coming in on random plays to kind of give him a spell. And it was all Pollard, and he did well. Their line, the Tennessee line, both the defense and offensive line, were relatively dominating. I think they wore down, which makes sense in these first weeks because no one plays in the preseason. Yeah. These guys, they practice. I don't know. I mean, they're athletes. I'm not saying they're out of shape, but they're not in full game conditioning yet. They look great for the first half, and by the time the fourth quarter came around, they were running out of gas. It doesn't help when your quarterback for your team is giving the ball back away to the other team quickly, and you're back on the field quite a bit. What else did you notice in this game here?
Well, I noticed the Bears defense, and I got that reminiscence. It might have been 5-6 years ago when the Bears was the dominant defense. Everybody wanted Bears special teams, Bears defense on their fantasy roster. It was definitely reminiscent of that. It looked like the Titans were missing that big spark. I liked what I saw from Will. There were a couple of things that you were like, okay, this guy's still a new quarterback. He's trying to scramble. He's getting sacked. He's trying to throw the ball away, and it's an interception because he's trying to flick it out. He's trying to do more than what he should be trying to do. But the Bears special teams, whatever they're doing, they're doing it right there. The game started off boring, and I really wanted Caleb to shine in this game. I mean, there were 4 punts, 2 from each side at the beginning of this game, and then Pollard had his touchdown. So outside of the defense kind of showing off, it wasn't a pretty game for Tennessee. It wasn't a pretty game for Chicago, but I think Chicago showed promise, and I think Tennessee also showed a little promise. Pollard, if he can do what he did now and keep building on that, I think it'll be good because Spears is a good back, and I think he'll come on as well.
So I was watching for Ridley a little bit. He didn't get too many targets. So
I didn't even realize
there's a lot of things that upset me about this. One, really got open repeatedly.
Yeah.
And he got missed on some. I thought he was going to catch 2 bomb touchdowns. Obviously, one before the other. The first one, he was wide open, and the ball was like a good 6 yards short. He had to come back into the defender who he beat by 5 yards or whatever it was. And it also later, but even saying that they missed him on bombs, which would be nice for the final stat line. The thing I hated about his usage with Jacksonville is all they did was have him run down the sideline. He's a better receiver than that. In the preseason, I don't know if you remember the plays I liked. He was doing the old what Julio Jones used to do before they just started sending him down the sideline, where he would do like the slants and the crosses, and then he's so fast. Kind of like how Tyreek scored today. That was a deep play, but it wasn't. It was a crossing, and then he was able to turn up the field with his speed. Now, most guys don't have that speed to turn up in that short amount of distance, but if you catch a crossing pattern and you get a nice seal block, he is. I was impressed with how fast really was and how much he was beating defenders with his speed, but they were just having him run down. He was like Marquez Valdez-Scantling running down the field with a guy who wasn't being able to hit him, and it was very frustrating because he wasn't able to get that rhythm. A couple times he did like one 15-yard out. They nailed him. That was the only time he ran it, and they caught it. More of those outs, more of those crossing patterns, mix those up with the long bombs, and that's how those long bombs get more open, where the underthrow is the guy's so wide open he can come back to the ball without the coverage there.
So what do we chop that up to? Do we chop that up to just coaching on that end? Because when he was in Atlanta, he was the second to Julio. So he was put in that position where Julio would streak and then Ridley would be cutting across. It was one of those things where that's just his skill set was developed that way early in his career. And he's really good at it. He's got really sharp cuts. He's got really, bursty kind of speed, like you were saying. Does that come down to him just not running the routes they're giving him to perfection, or they're just giving him the wrong routes to run?
Wrong routes, because he was getting open on most of his routes today. Well, Levis was in duress sometimes.
Yeah.
So like when you run around, you can't. Guys are open all the time, and a quarterback can't get it to him simply because they're not facing the right way due to pressure and other factors on the field. So I'm not saying that. I was pleased with how he was getting open. He was getting open. It seemed every time, but the ratio of long bomb routes, which when they hit are awesome, but that's not these big time receivers. Your AJ Browns, these are the guys who catch the bombs, but they get peppered with 8 yard in, 8 yard in, 8 yard in, then over the top. If you just throw 6 bombs, you're going to catch. If you're lucky, you catch 1 or 2 of them, and you might not catch any. And those are the frustrating days. So I think it's play calling to some degree. Because I thought his ratio of long routes to more efficient routes, and he's one of those players similar. I'm trying to think of other players. Amari Cooper's one, in my opinion, through his career anyway. Guys who, when they are the one against an elite cornerback. Now I'm not sure who the Bears cornerback is. I should, but I don't know. These guys are they're like number 1 receivers, but they're not number 1s against number 1 cornerbacks. Yeah. They just obviously a number 1 cornerback is going to slow you down. Maybe DK Metcalf's becoming that because he gets bottled up by these really, really good corners and he torches the weaker ones. And I think Calvin Ridley is definitely in that tier and he's the one and gets all the attention. If there's a solid defender on the other side who's going to follow him, it's going to curtail him. But I think once they get DeAndre Hopkins back more healthy, Hopkins did play, but he was on the field for like 20% of the snaps.
Yeah.
I think those two guys have a good mix of skill sets as he might get more open on the deep ball for really once you have someone like Hopkins who will take up more of the middle of the field and kind of have that balance of routes that require the respect. Today, when you have is it Treylon Burks who's just running jet sweeps and getting tackled for negative plays?
Yeah, the negative ones were rough.
So I mean, they didn't have the complimentary routes today to open that up, but he was getting open and Levis missed him. So there's potential here. That's why he's the roller coaster, man. He's going to catch that every couple weeks and he's not going to catch in the other weeks.
Exactly. So I'll give you to finish this one up. I got a next gen stat. I've been using a couple of their sites to just kind of get some info here. It says the Bears generated pressure on 47.4% of Will Levis's dropbacks. I mean, that's a lot. That's the second highest pressure rate in a game over the last 3 seasons, it says. That is, I mean, it's hard for him not to get sacked more is a testament to him in the aspect of getting out of those situations. So.
And Levis is not good at handling pressure. He doesn't see it very well, generally speaking. He's not as bad as Fields. Fields is more because he just holds it and whatever.
Yeah.
but he's not good at recognizing pressure. He doesn't step up in the right places. He got a strong arm. So I mean, he's got potential, but like being that pressure rate was so high, it makes complete sense why he did not succeed today.
Yeah. Okay. So the next game I got up here is the Texans and the Colts, and that's the Texans winning that game 29, Colts 27. So this was a nail biter down to the end here. It start off with Mixon. Mixon showed up. He looked
great. He looked great.
Yeah.
He's not surprised me. I did not give him the benefit of the doubt, and he looked great.
Yeah, Mixon, he had 159 rushing yards on 30 carries, so that's a 5.3 yards per carry. He looked like the number one he should have been looking like all through his career. And then, DeMarco Ryan's trust in his quarterback, in his young receivers, just shows how much it's almost reminiscent of Andy Reid trusting young Mahomes to just go out and play the game. Here's the script that we're going to try for. Here are the plays we're going to call, but I want you to go out there and I want you to just play your game. I trust you to make the decisions that you're going to make on the field. So that's good on the coach to trust that his young quarterback there. As far as like game script goes, though, the Colts missed a big opportunity with their game script. I don't know if it was the coaching or if it was Richardson. Richardson was a stud, and we called it out earlier, but he, I believe, was a stud that hurt his team because Jonathan Taylor didn't get the carries, didn't get the consistency he needed, especially in those close short yardage goal line situations where it would have helped open up the back end of the field. Obviously they're worried about AR running, but if you've got a 1-2 like that, if you got Jonathan Taylor there, you got to give him the ball. I mean, I don't know if that's a coaching thing or if that's Anthony just making that decision on his own.
I'll tell you what I think about that particularly. So Richardson's passing percentage was awful today. Awful.
Yeah. It was a lot of throwing it up there.
So I'm not comparing him at skill set or anything else, but just I consider almost like it was prettier than that, but it's similar to like a Tebow game where he can't hit guys regularly, but it's like if I throw 12 bombs, I don't have to be 60% accurate. If I'm 20% accurate and we hit, those are worth a ton. But because he was so inaccurate on the regular type passes, they were behind the chains all the time, and then you can't run the ball when you're behind when it's 2nd and 10, 3rd and 10. You can't run the ball, and so they were deferring to Richardson first. Yeah. That caused them to get behind the chains. So they couldn't go to Taylor. Yep. And then they would throw the bomb. They would catch some, and they wouldn't catch some. And that's what it was. They scored on big plays, but they had like 4 of them all game long, and they had nothing else, relatively speaking.
Yeah. So it sounds like based on that, it's like almost like it wasn't even a game script dilemma. It was like an individual possession dilemma where they could have used those first plays with Richardson as the third down play, as the 2nd and 3rd down play, and just give Jonathan Taylor those first down looks just to open up, because Richardson is going to get a couple of yards on his feet, but save that for when you need it, when there's a little bit more room to wiggle, to kind of play outside of the line to get those yards and not, like you said, waste them on the first down.
And the few times they did have 3rd and long, for example, that they did convert, they weren't the short passes. They were all him running.
Yeah.
So he kept some drives alive, but it was all him. His teammates didn't get any of it, except for I noticed Adonai Mitchell was throwing to him a lot deep, and they weren't quite connecting. I don't know if it was whose fault it was. Like I said, he was kind of erratic with his throws.
Right.
Oh, interception! Sorry, interception in the end zone by the Lions, which helps me out. It keeps them out of the end zone and gets a point for the interception. Okay, here we go. Come on, guys. Come on,
Matt Stafford. Oh, look, they're playing in a dome. Oh, Jared Goff.
All right. So, he was missing with Mitchell. He was throwing to Mitchell. I thought at a glance, I had that game on in front of me as well. I felt like he was targeting Adonai Mitchell the most, especially in the second half. They weren't connecting the most. His big connections, both of his big connections, came to Alec Pierce, was the no name, not no name. He's been on that team for a long time. It's funny. He's known Alec Pierce last year. I don't know the exact stat, but it goes something like this. I think he was on the field the most of any receiver in the league last year, which is good for him because he's usually hurt. Right. Or he ran the most routes. He had some quantitative stat that led the league or was in the top 1% of the league. But he was like in the bottom 99th in like in actual production. So he was literally just the guy running track. He didn't catch the ball. He's like, go out there. You're our deep guy. Just run down and get guys open underneath you. But with someone like Richardson, if that's the guy running deep, and you have a guy who's just willing to just throw it deep for the heck of it, it seemed like that's a dart throw flex guy later in the bye week season where you might be able to throw an Alec Pierce or Adonai Mitchell, because those are the guys running the deep routes. It wasn't Pittman so much. He had a couple, but those guys are just repeatedly running those deep routes. And like we know, Richardson's either running that 8 yards after a scramble or he's throwing a 40-yard pass downfield. There's nothing in between.
Yeah. And, to flip and go on the other side, Stroud looked great. The Diggs looked good. Nico Collins looked good. Like they looked like they were in sync. They looked like they were just a continuation from the end of last season. So they'll be an exciting team to watch. Now, if the Colts can get their gameplay together, get their play calling together, they're going to be good. If they can rein in AR a little bit, maybe they've got a shot as well. The division, in my opinion, that division is wide open. Anybody could take that division.
So it was interesting because this game was close, especially with a late score that made it that way. Yeah. But the two game flows couldn't have been any different. You had one team going for home run plays and having their drives end early, but when they scored fast or scored on a lot of yards at once. And the other team was just methodical, just taking up so many plays, 10-yard drives. The only difference was sometimes the Texans would take a long time getting down and then throw an interception at the goal line or something. That's what kind of kept it close too. So for every punt on this side, you had a turnover on that side. And for every long bomb on the Colts, you had a 9 to 12-yard play, it seemed like, for the Texans. It was so weird that the styles are completely different, but they ended up being pretty much tied throughout the whole game until Texans scored they finally didn't throw an interception on the goal line and had 2 touchdowns in the fourth quarter, or at least late third to the fourth quarter.
Yeah. So those were the 3 games that I really kind of watched in depthly. I had the red zone on another TV that I was kind of glancing over and just kind of seeing some highlight plays and obviously the touchdown plays and stuff. So is there any particular game you want to get into next, or you want me to just go down?
Sure. Well, just because these are the 1 o'clock games here, we had I had it on in the corner, but I wasn't staring at it. It was the side TV for a handful of reasons. I was afraid to watch. I was playing against 2 Dolphins, Tyreek Hill and Achane. But I have to say, Achane, again, I didn't watch every play. I was checking the stats. They were not running the ball well at all. But every time I looked up, I didn't see Mostert at all. I was almost wondering where he was. And then I saw him in the second half, and he looked very frustrated after getting a 1-yard carry. And Jeff Wilson got he got a lot of run in the early fourth quarter before they put back Achane in. But Achane was by far the goal line back. The few times they were down close, I didn't see, and I was looking because I know like I said before, they run a lot of 2 running back sets, and a lot of times they have both Achane and Mostert. It was all Achane on the field. He did not get a lot of carries. He had a lot of catches, but he was the one on the field. I don't even know. It seemed like 95% of the time. I didn't see Mostert hardly at all. And I don't know if it's a change in the guard. Again, we'll see how Achane can hold up health-wise, and that's a fair thing to ask for even about Mostert. But it was Achane all the time until the later second half where I saw Wilson getting in. And I think that was just a change of pace because Mostert was either not performing or was completely frustrated and got taken out of the game.
Yeah, I think the couple of running plays that I did see from the Dolphins, it was Achane, and he was running good, and he had some explosiveness still to him. So I agree with that take on that. The one thing I did notice about this game though is that there were a lot of turnover on down. I don't know if I just catching it at that time, but Dolphins, I believe, had 2 turnovers on downs, and Jacksonville had 1 turnover on down. So they were really trying to stick it to each other there.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't know if we should bring it up now because we're still waiting on a game here, but just because we're here and I'm going to go back a little bit. This was one of our wingman jam picks, one of the ones we were different on. We'll get back to the scoreboard later when it counts on Thursday when we go over last week's wingman jam and start our next one. But the 48 and a half over under on this game, weather was not a factor, which is one of the main reasons why I was considering.
Oh, yeah.
But the game did take the under as one team scored each half and the other team didn't score the opposite half. It was, I think, 17-3 or 17-zip at halftime. And then Dolphins tied it up late and then took a late field goal to win this one at the end.
Yeah. So it was good. And I'm glad that the Dolphins did win, but it was tough. I expected more from both teams. So my pick says.
So yeah, so someone made a point that usually the Dolphins, in their overall history, they've always been great on opening day, except for one game I remember because I picked them to win and they lost against the Texans in the Texans third year in existence or something. Anyway, but a lot of times their advantage is the heat when it comes to September games. But they played against another Florida team, so that advantage might have been dissipated. And I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Did it have anything to do with the eventful commute that Tyreek Hill had? I try to stay away from gossip stuff. Did you happen to? I just know that he got arrested for potentially speeding on the way to the stadium. Do you know anything more about that? Did you see any of the clips that were out there? There were clips. I just didn't watch it. I don't like to watch that stuff. But
yeah, so I didn't see anything. I got a text this morning from a friend that said all the text said was Tyreek got arrested, and I was like, what? And this was earlier than me turning all my stuff on, and so a couple of our viewers are on a group chat, and so I sent a message out and I said, hey, is Tyreek playing today? Did he get arrested or something? And they kind of gave me the story that he was stopped by police. There was some altercation going on, some handcuffs going on, but then he was released with a citation. And then he was going to play. Everything was okay. And then apparently the Miami-Dade Sheriff's Office sent out something that said that one of the officers involved will be put on administrative duties.
I did see that, yes.
Until the investigation of what happened goes through. So maybe there's some body cam footage or something going on. I'm with you though. I don't really get into the off-field stuff and too much, unless it's like a serious thing, and I gotta know because it's just serious enough. But I try to stay clear of that. So maybe somebody can leave a comment. One of our viewers can leave a comment about what's going on. Keep us informed. That would be great. Maybe they want to come talk to us. They can send a mailbag in. However they want to communicate how they feel about what happened with Tyreek. But it was surprising because I was expecting Tyreek to see him early and often, and I just didn't. And
I thought I was gonna survive him for a little bit, but I knew not to believe it. And then he had that 80-yard touchdown. And then what started that was, now that I'm thinking about it, so as it happened, the play before that 80-yard touchdown was an ETN fumble going into the end zone. And as I was watching, they scored this, they're putting this one away. Not officially, but there was been 18 minutes left. They would have been up 24-zip at that point, or 24-3, whatever the score was, or maybe 24-7. But it was, and he fumbled it in the very next play. So that was a 14-point swing in 10 seconds of game time.
Yeah. So happy they won. Tough game to watch.
The other thing I did notice, ETN did score. He had that awful fumble, like I said. But Tank Bigsby got a lot of run.
Okay.
He had as many carries as ETN. I think they both had either 12 or 14. It was right there. I think Bigsby also fumbled just by watching, unless I was mixing up players. But they both got the same amount of run. Bigsby looked fast. He looked explosive. He got most of the work in the second half. As far as my glancing up was, they're both single digits, so it's kind of, at a glance, it's hard to double check. But being that Bigsby didn't play at all last year, some of it was because of his inability to hold on the ball, but he fumbled, but so did ETN. And ETN's, I would say, they were both problems. But fumbling when you're getting ready to score is, I think, hurts more than hurts just as much as turning the ball over on your side of the field.
Yeah, so I got it up here for you. It is Tank Bigsby with 12 carries, ETN with 12 carries. Bigsby had 73 yards, and Tank had 44. Tank had the touchdown though, so Bigsby actually was running at a clip of 6.08, and Tank only 3.67 per carry. So yeah, it was, or I'm sorry, ETN at 3.6 per carry. So it was definitely.
So ETN had the touchdown though, but yes.
Yeah, ETN had the touchdown, which
Right.
kind of gave him that stat line. But Tank was right there with him.
So-
Tank was better than him running.
Right. So like I said, I have the box score here. I don't know why I'm not looking. I was going by memory. Like Jeff Wilson came in again. It was either early fourth, late third. It was when they were already come. I think they already tied it up at that point, maybe, or maybe they were down 3. But like I said, HN was not running the ball well in terms of rushing. He had most of his work today in receiving game. Mostert wasn't doing anything, and Wilson came in and ripped off a few runs. He actually he led the team in rushing with only 5 carries at 26 yards. That's how bad of a day they were on the ground. And both Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle both eclipsed 100 yards. And Waddle left the game. I think it was a concussion test. But he did return back to the game, so he obviously cleared concussion protocol on the game day. Sometimes these things have some reoccurring or late setting in symptoms, so just keep an eye on that. But at least during the game, he was deemed to be okay to return.
Yeah, and then let's just give a quick shout out to UCF alum, Mr. Gabe Davis. He did have 3 receptions for 62 yards on 3 targets, so he took full advantage of his 3 targets. Big game, Gabe. So. Go UCF.
All right. Let's get to the next game here.
All right. You want to look at? You got one lined up, or you want to look at?
No, just tee up a game because these are ones we are looking at until we get to the 4 o'clocks. These are ones we kind of looked at a glance, but we were watching all day. So what do you got?
Yeah. So the one that I really wanted to dig into, but I didn't, was the Arizona Buffalo game.
I had that one on. I was watching that quite a bit.
Yeah. So just to get into that, I thought from the beginning, let's go. Arizona is going to take this down. They just looked on fire and Buffalo looked stale. That's what I saw coming out of the gates. And then I don't know if somebody told Josh Allen that Arizona stole his dog or something, but he's just like a man alive here and like jumping into the end zone for touchdowns. Like he just took that game on his back for Buffalo. So what did you see?
So this game was pretty much a microcosm of their entire season last year, where they weren't doing well. Like last year, their first whatever was 8 games or so, they weren't. They were like 4-6 or 4-5, and they had to win their last 7 games in a row to win the division. It was just like that, and it wasn't because they got better. They gave credit last year to their firing of the offensive coordinator. It was because Josh Allen's like, screw it, I'm just going to run. I'm going to run until they get knocked out of the game. And on that diving touchdown you mentioned, he went up high. That's where he fell down on his thumb, on his left thumb. They had to tape it up, and he looked a little shaken by it. Obviously, it's an extremity from a non-throwing hand, so I don't think it's going to affect his playing ability. But he did get hurt doing that, and he does that because I know we're not Buffalo fans here, but he's one of those guys, like, if it's not working, screw it, I'll do it myself, regardless of what it means to his body, for example. And he's so good at those things that he can win a game by himself if he just, I'm doing it. Now, the problem is that's going to wear him down and he's starting in game 1. Last year he didn't do that. He was trying to, do the passing game and stuff and be a little more balanced. This time he's like, we can't get down to be a 2-3 team in the first 5 weeks. So we got to get this one. So that's kind of how I saw it. Like they were down early too as well. Same thing as always with Arizona. You have Murray running around. He looks fast, but eventually he gets caught and gets sacked. Or he might run a couple plays forward, but when he gets sacked, that sack's like 16 yards. It's a drive killer.
Yeah, because he's scrambling backwards. Yeah.
There were turnovers, a sack fumble, I think. I don't have the stats in front of me, but they were doing good, and then I'll look back, and there'd be either a penalty or a sack that would just set them back. They stopped scoring after the third drive. Essentially, they had that huge kick return by the slowest kick return I've ever seen, but he had a 96-yard kick return. He looked like a fullback. Maybe he is. I don't know, but he went down the sideline. He made it. He scored on that, and that put him back in the game after the Bills actually had taken the lead. And then Connor looked good. He did not look fast, but I thought Connor's feet were sweet.
Connor did look good.
He, like I said, he was very slow, but he was like when the guys were grabbing at his ankles, he was pulling his feet out every time.
Yeah,
I don't think he wasn't breaking tackles, but he wasn't going down on first contact if it wasn't like a straight shot. So I was very impressed with it. He was doing tire drills around people's arms and hands today, or the agility ladder. So he looked really good that way. He got in the end zone, also scored on a 2-point conversion, which helped his day out quite a bit. He looked good. I noticed DeMarcado was the first running back in, and Benson didn't come into the fourth quarter, but he did take over the spell work in the late second half. I don't know if DeMarcado got hurt. They were the way they were rotating guys, but I was looking to see who's going to be his backup because we know Connor's going to miss a handful of games every year. And it was DeMarcado in the first half, and it was Benson later in the second half. Just keep an eye on that. If you see that he's banged up, those are the guys you're looking for. I thought both guys looked the same, Mercado and Benson. They're big bodies. They didn't look they looked the part, but they weren't explosive or anything. They were just kind of like your normal backup running back taking in some carries.
Yeah. And then Greg Dortch, kind of there, just doing his thing. McBride didn't really have his big game. He had 5 receptions. But he did lead in targets with 9 targets. So McBride is still going to be, the first look, but not necessarily always going to pull out the big game. Kyler did look good, though. I mean, it was one of those things where, again, if you're not watching the whole game and you're just kind of glancing over at it, he's doing something. He's making a play. He's kind of he's making it exciting. He's just not Josh Allen. If Josh Allen had the running skill set at the size he is of Kyler Murray, he'd be Cam Newton. It would just be it would be unstoppable. Or he would be Lamar Jackson at that point. So it was a good game. I'm sad to see Buffalo win, but Arizona put up a fight. And again, it's one of those things where we'll find out on the Wingman Jam how we fared for that pick. So, all right,
All right, yeah.
let's move on. Let's move on to this New England Cincinnati game. The big headline for this game was everybody that plays elimination pool games got knocked out because everybody picked Cincinnati.
So I did not watch any of this game. It did not make the cut. I had 5 games on. I think there's 1 or 2 games that didn't make the cut. This was one of them. My wife did pick Cincinnati for her survivor pool, and she is out. So she's like, and I was like, I don't know if you should do it or not, but everyone's streaming the Cincinnati defense. So the fantasy community, the NFL community is all picking Cincinnati. So she asked me if that's a good pick. I'm like, I don't know enough to tell you not to, but I'll just say that a lot of people are making that pick. So a lot of people are dumb.
So from the little bit of I saw of this game, it really looked like whatever is going on behind the scenes, whatever is going on in practice, whatever was going on in preseason, they just were in sync. It looked like they had just stepped out on the field for the first time, and they were just going like, "Oh, this is what we're doing today. All right, let's do this," and they just couldn't pull it off. So I'm glad that Mixon had a big game on a different team. I'm not a Cincinnati fan. I'm definitely not a Patriots fan, so could care either way. But without Higgins there, without Chase being like the guy, like ready to go, game plan, timing wise with Burrow, everything, like you could see it, and it just looked bad. So
And
we don't have to spend too much time on this game.
Well,
here.
fantasy wise, obviously the outcome of the NFL score was the biggest news in the NFL world. But fantasy wise, we'd be remiss not to mention Ramondre Stevenson getting a workman's load amount of carries, doing what we know he can do. They were a ball controlled team today. Now, the thing is, with Cincinnati struggling so much on offense, that gave them the opportunity to be able to manage the game how you would be when you're in the lead. I don't know how often the Patriots will be able to run the ball late in games due to them having a lead. But when they do, we know what their preference is. Ramondre. He got all the work and paid everyone off who put him in their lineups today.
Oh, yeah, this game script really paid off for him today. And Jacoby looked good. Brissett did not look like a quarterback that is old and not a starter. He looked good enough to not lose a game. He might be, you never know, the next quiet man, Ryan Fitzpatrick or something. So he was good. It was nice to see that. I'd like to see the rookie play, but I'm okay with not seeing the rookie play.
Were there any more 1 o'clock games, or can we go to the 4 o'clock games now?
Yeah, we can go. Carolina, Cincinnati, Indy, Miami, Carolina, New Orleans.
We can skip that. Well, all we know is that Derek Carr had a bunch of touchdown passes early. They were all to backup tight ends, and Kamara was all of his work. He got, obviously they probably were resting him. I didn't watch too much of that game either, but they were just putting it on him. Carolina, I thought that was the sneaky team that I trusted the least, and they show that maybe Bryce Young just won out. In fairness, New Orleans' strength is their defense. But my goodness. It's much better than Carolina's offense. That was disgusting.
So this is the possessions for Carolina.
Oh no, I don't.
In order.
Okay,
Ready? Interception, punt, fumble, punt, field goal, interception, touchdown, punt, turnover on downs, punt, end of the fourth quarter.
I thought now it's one game, but Bryce Young had a lot of people saying he can't do it, and I was chalking it up to coaching changes and other stuff like that. And man, they could not compete today, and that was a division game, so they're only going to get one or two more chances before it's just going to be sell all your Panthers. Chuba Hubbard got outplayed by Miles Sanders, who we thought was hurt and maybe not even going to play. So this is just a dumpster fire for now. Stay away. Thielen couldn't do it. Deontay Johnson couldn't do it. It was just a mess. Alvin Kamara had a nice game today. I had him on the list somewhere. I just closed it off. He had almost 20 points.
Kamara did.
110 total yards and a touchdown. Most of that was in the first half. He had 70 yards at halftime, and I kept looking at that box score, and it just stayed the same forever. I don't know if they were just trying to get Carr trying some things because they had opportunities that he couldn't lose the game for him, or what. Taysom Hill got carries. Taysom Hill was the backup running back.
Yep, he did get some carries, so maybe we need to have Yahoo make him quarterback, tight end, RB, so I can get 3 spots for him. But yeah, it was good. All right, let's move on. Let's go to the Minnesota Giants game with the throw way back uniforms that the Giants were wearing.
Yeah. So I didn't watch this. Is the other game that didn't make the list because these games it wouldn't have anyway. But with the score being what it was, and it looked like it was kind of a boring game. As Darnold started, I think completed his first 10 passes or 9, but only had like 40 yards doing it.
Yeah.
So
let's just say the Vikings 28, Giants. Just so our viewers know.
All right. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Detroit just got another interception on Sunday night. Thank you guys. Every point's going to give me a chance here for the comeback. Yeah, the Giants were awful. Daniel Jones, from what I read and could gather, was awful. They're like, why is he on the team kind of bad? I didn't see it personally, but just turnovers at the worst times, missing players. Malik Neighbors actually had a decent amount of yards considering how much he had a good chunk of the entire Giants yards, which was hardly anything at all.
Yeah. Is it a surprise that Cincinnati didn't really do that great and Mixon did do good and the Giants didn't do that great and Saquon tore it up? Is it really a surprise that these good players are leaving these franchises and the franchises don't seem to have an answer or a replacement or an idea of what they're doing? I did watch a little bit of the beginning of the game. Daniel Jones showed me why I didn't draft him, but there was a moment there, and I'm going to be honest,
okay?
Because the only thing we can do on this show is just be honest. There was a moment where he was running and he was putting his shoulder down, and I was like, "Oh, I need to go put him on my old man." It's just one of those things. I don't want to get beat by him, so I'm just gonna have to draft it or pick him up off the waiver, sit him on the end of my bench, so I don't get beat by him.
Well, you could just fly up to New York and do a Tanya Harding and just get it. I'm kidding. We're not advocating for lead pipe violence here, but anyway.
No. Okay. All right, let's move on. Any other fun facts about that game now? No. You know what? There is Sam Darnold. He's I believe he's still on our waiver wire. He looked good. He played a good game, and the Vikings. They look good. I mean, the Giants are bad, but we don't know yet. It's only the first game how good the Vikings are.
I would say in that game, just by the box score, that it was clear that, again, another guy I really liked, but it just nervousness and where he went in the draft. Aaron Jones was the number 1. He was the guy getting all the carries. He was good. He's always been good when he's healthy. The only time he hasn't been good is last year. He missed half the season being questionable, and every time he came back, he tweaked it. Last year is not an indication. I know he's getting older. but last year was not an indication of his talent falling off. If anything, if you want to worry about his age, it was the injury part of it. But that's not necessarily, that's not a recurrable thing necessarily. He looked great when he was healthy in the last fourth of the season during the playoffs, and it's carrying over. Like I said, I like seeing those guys who get in a rhythm late. I know it's not a true carryover, but he's good. And if he's going to be the focal point of any offense, he's going to produce.
Yep. Okay, moving on. Let's see. Let's go since the Giants.
Actually, before we move on, I want to mention one more thing about that game. I know we don't want to stay here too long. So the idea was Justin Jefferson had an okay game. He did get in the end zone, which helped have a good score. But long bomb for Detroit, who just scored. Ow.
Is that Amon-Ra?
Jameson Williams.
Oh, he's on my bench.
He had about a 68-yard touchdown. Jared Goff, the Dominator, doing dominating things.
There's a flag on the play. Let's see what this flag is.
I'm going to say it's excessive celebration or defensive interference. Oh, we're going to wait here and watch because we have a long touchdown with a flag.
Oh, boy.
Defensive touchdown. It's a defensive penalty. It's going to hold up. Touchdown, okay. Jameson Williams. All right, so the one thing I wanted to mention, sorry about that, is
no, you're good.
Is the fact that we had so Jefferson had an okay game. He was fine, especially compared to other receivers, like Jamar Chase, for example. Yeah. But the idea was even with Nick Mullins last year, he's going to be peppered with targets. He only had 4 catches today. I don't know how many targets he ended up having. I would assume it wasn't much more than that. If you have it quickly, maybe I would say 7 to 8 targets at the most. Mm-hmm. So the idea, that's fine. And they were up in this game by a lot, so they were doing ball control. So I'm not, but the thought was no matter who the quarterback is, that he's going to be peppered with targets because that's just how his play demands. And he did not get a lot of targets, did not get a lot of receptions. He did have a touchdown, which saved his day, and he's going to be the primary target in the red zone when it comes to receivers. So keep that in mind.
All right, let's see here. Receiving. Jefferson had 6 targets.
6 targets, yeah. 4 catches.
Yep. And
for 40 or 60 yards or something.
I don't see Mullins on here.
No, that was last year. Nick Mullins was the quarterback last year, and he was able to sustain Justin Jefferson after the injury of Kirk Cousins. So I'm like, my point was anyone can be quarterback and pepper him with targets.
Gotcha.
But Darnold did not. Now, it could have been game script, but Darnold did not pepper Jefferson with targets today.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, my bad. I was like, I don't think there's a Mullins on this team this year, but okay, yes, I understand. Yeah. Last year, quarterback, yes. Sam Darnold did, he finished with 2 touchdowns, only 208 yards, so it wasn't like a crazy stat line, but it wasn't it wasn't hard. So,
but he's a game manager, and they were in the lead, so they were managing the game. So what else can you ask for there? That's fine.
Exactly.
All right, let's get these 4:00 games. We got to move along here.
Yeah, let's move along. All right, so let's staying on the throwback theme from the Giants. Let's go to Oakland and San Diego.
LA. Let's put them in the right. Although it seemed like they were playing from San Diego. This game, these 4:00 games. I was sitting out here. I had the 4 games on, and I eventually just put my head down and went inside. It was awful. The
Raiders scored 10, Chargers 22 at the final.
Yeah, and it was awful. It was just
it was bad. Just to look at some quick stats lines here. Gardner Minshew had 257 yards with 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He threw the ball 33 times, so that's not too bad. Zamir White, 13 carries with 44 yards. Not anything great. And Jacoby Myers, 61 yards on 3 receptions.
The best catch I saw from Devontae Adams was early in the game before I put my head down in shame. They threw a ball. It went out of bounds, and he was like 3 yards out of bounds, just stuck his hand up and just caught it one-handed so nonchalantly. I was like, man, that guy can catch. If only he was in bounds, that'd be awesome.
So, and this is a little shout out to Brock Bowers, receiver.
He looked good.
He had 8 targets. He didn't get a touchdown. He did have 6 catches, 58 yards. He did look good, but he led the target share there with 8 targets.
And he wasn't the only one. They were throwing for a stretch there. They threw to only tight ends. And it was 3 different tight ends. It was Mayer and was it Bryant maybe? Harrison Bryant, I believe. Anyway, I was like, is that Bowers? Because I don't know Bowers' number because he's been hurt all preseason. Mm-hmm. And he just kept throwing tight ends. I don't know if they had 3 tight ends in the formation. They were trying to come back. That's what they were doing. They were throwing to tight ends. And eventually Bowers caught like 3 or 4 passes in that like later part of the game. He looked good. He got open with a great route running, breaking it off and then turning up the field. Like he has, I don't watch college too much except for my teams. And I know he's a stud prospect, but his feet were nice. He looked like he's got a chance there.
Okay. And on the other side of the ball with the new head coach, Herbert, only 17 of 26 with 144 yards and a touch. So that wasn't anything too
That's what we were kind of expecting. He's going to be a game manager based upon the style of coaching and the fact that they don't have those big time receivers for them. Like, why would you lean on the receivers? They went with the running game. Gus Edwards looked pretty awful, just running to the back of the pile, getting 2 yards at a time. I remember him being bigger. He looked small out there to me. Dobbins looked really good. He had one really long run late that's kind of sealed the game. And I don't know if something pulled up or he's out of shape. He was going, and you could see he was like, I'm not going to outrun these guys. And he just totally de-throttled it down. And he decided to cover up the ball, worrying about ball security, which is a good NFL play. But he was in front of everybody after about 40 yards of a run, give or take. And there was about 15 to 20 yards left in front of him to score. And he just never mind. And I was not wondering if he tweaked something. He didn't come up looking hobbled or anything, but he didn't have the juice to go that on a long run. But he's been out for a long time, coming back from a lot of injuries. So I'm not maybe he's working his way up, but he looked the best by far of the running backs on that team. And that's going to be a team that's going to run the ball. And I'm very upset about that because J.K. Dobbins was one of the very last picks in our draft, and it looks like he might be one of the early steals of the draft.
Definitely. And then as far as receiving goes, it looks like Herbert's favorite target this game was Mr. Ladd McConkey. And I just want to say his name over and over again. I'm sorry, Ladd McConkey. There's no L in McConkey. So five receptions for 39 yards, but he had 7 targets there. So
he looked pretty good. I was actually not impressed. I was surprised. Quentin Johnson was on the field quite a bit, and he actually looked okay. He made a couple good catches. I think one catch he made, there might have been a flag. They had to pull it back. It might have been his best catch. But he wasn't stone hands McGee out there. He was catching some of the balls out there. Got into a nice fight with Josh Palmer against the other teammate at the end, as we did have an ejection at the end of the game. But they were just managing the game. They were up. They were playing against a team that they didn't have to worry about scoring. So even when they were tied, they were just doing what they had to do, running the ball and taking up time. And that's what Harbaugh does. Like you said, they're winners. They're going to work on the winning first. And once they get the winning, maybe those play action plays will come out for Herbert. Don't forget Herbert's coming off a foot injury, so he wasn't looking to overexert himself and have a setback in that regard.
Yeah, and then we got going on to Denver and Seattle. Denver 20, Seattle 26. This was an exciting game for me because I had a couple of Seahawks there to look at, but it was one of those games that I knew going in that Bo Nix can play in the NFL, but he's going to be a rough start for him in the NFL.
He was working on the stat line I predicted in the preseason when I said he'd go like 27 for 30 for 118 yards. I think before he got inaccurate in that second half, he was like 10 for 12 for like 45 yards. It was like literally, it wasn't 3 yards. He wasn't averaging 3 yards an attempt. He was averaging 3 yards a completion through the first half. It was, oh my gosh. And Seattle's defense was like, you know what? We are just going to, when he says hike, we all run forward as fast as we can. And they kept just tackling everybody at the line of scrimmage because there was no need to play any sort of backline defense. And when you have all 11 guys in the box, even on passing plays, these guys are getting blown up. Javonte Williams wasn't doing anything except picking up blitzes, but there were 3 guys blitzing and the other 2 were getting through. And Nix was just, we'll see what happens. I think Sean Payton, he's like, I love short passes. Yeah, but it's got to be part of a total combination of plays, not like that's what we're going to do all the time and let the defense just key in on running downhill against our receivers and running backs.
Yeah. And it was one of those things where he was your leading rusher as well. He's only throwing 138, yards passing, Bo Nix. And if he's your leading rusher, then I want to see like 100 yards rushing. If you're only going to throw 138 yards passing, but it was 35 yards.
So did you notice rushing. I was watching your game because your game was the closest fantasy wise against Alex's. They took our jarbs. So you for a minute you came back with a lead on the clock, but you had. You had points to give up on your defense still, as they were still holding under 200 total yards of offense for the Broncos. And a couple plays happened that swung this game. Spoiler alert, Bernie's team lost by just over 1 point, like 1.08 points, give or take. Yeah. and it came down to the buzzer as he had 2 Seahawks, and they took our jobs, had 1 Seahawk and DK Metcalf. There were 2 plays that made this huge. Did you see what we thought at the time was Ken Walker's second touchdown?
I did not see it. No.
Okay, it was after he scored his first touchdown. He started off very slow and then was taking over in the second half. And he ran in a touchdown, and it got called back for holding. And do you know who did the holding? I bet you can guess.
No.
DK Metcalf played defense against. So they took our jobs, had DK Metcalf. Metcalf wasn't getting any points, and he's like, you know what? Team B can't get points for Walker. He did holding on the other side of the play that had nothing to do with the touchdown. And he pulled. So the best play for they took our jobs by DK Metcalf all day was a holding call that brought back a touchdown from Ken Walker in the fourth quarter or late third. I saw that. I was like, oh, that's going to be the difference. The best play on offense was defense.
Well, I guess I'm going to have to watch that tomorrow on the on the coaches replays.
And then later, you were actually still up with both guys still in the game. I think Metcalf might have caught one more pass because I thought I saw him at 3.5 points. He finished with 4.5. Yeah. But the Seattle defense had, I don't know how many yards to give before they got to 200 yards allowed, but Bo Nix ran pretty much a 50-yard touchdown in at the end of the game, which was the play. I don't know if he needed all 50 and he only needed 10, but that play was the one that put him over that. So you lost 4 points by your defense by not holding him to under 200 yards. You lost 7 points due to the Metcalf holding earlier, and also in the fourth quarter, Walker, who was playing awesome, came up a little hobbled, and because they were leading, he didn't play those last 6 minutes or so, and Charbonnet got all the carries, and all he needed was about 5 to 8 more yards or another catch. So this game was going back, and I didn't think you had a chance for a while, but then you came back, and you were up, but you needed the combination of plays, and all the wrong things happened to Walker there and the Seattle defense. So if you want to go back and watch that second half and just
I am,
line it up with your points and see what the play was. You'll see that you had it. You had it. DK Metcalf is on the take.
Alex and DK collusion.
Otherwise, Nix was awful. Geno Smith was about what Geno Smith does. Had a couple nice plays, a couple nice runs, a couple dumb interceptions.
Well, you know what? That was another thing, and we can get into this in the next episode. But I was on the fence of picking up Geno off the waiver wire and starting him, and I would have won because Geno.
Oh, that's right. It wouldn't have taken much, but Geno did outperform Kirk Cousins.
Outperformed Kirk. Yep. So I'm not kicking myself again, but you know what? I'm okay. And again, we'll get into it later. I scored more than 100 points. I lost to a better team, which is totally fine. I'm not upset about it. So it's one of those things. If I would have just had a D+ draft and gotten 70 points, then I would have been upset, but I'm okay.
Gotcha. All right. So let's get on to that, the Commanders Bucks game. This one I had in the corner as well. And it seemed like there wasn't much points going. By the end of the game, this was a very high scoring game. What'd you see in this one?
In this one, I didn't see any of this game. This was one that I did not have on at all. So 37, final score, Commanders 20, Bucks 37.
Yes. So in this one, we had Evans caught the first touchdown. He did okay, especially starting off with the first score. He slowed down after that, but his catch was great. Just what he does, he just ran an okay route, but he doesn't get open because he's not super fast. And when the ball was in the air with 2 guys, him and his defender, he just shoved the guy essentially, just manhandled him. He didn't push him. He just put his arms in front of the other guy's arms, said, my arms go here, your body goes there, and caught the ball.
That's what Mike Evans does.
Yeah, it was a great throw. It could have easily been intercepted, but when you have one-on-one with such a manly man of Mike Evans, he's like, if it's near us, this is my ball. And that's all it was. He didn't jump. He's not fast. He doesn't jump anymore. He just ran through the guy and took the ball.
Yeah. I mean, with 61 yards, he got the 2 touchdowns. He had Rashad White and Chris Godwin out yard him. So he definitely made his presence known in that end zone.
And then Mayfield got most of his, he was doing well all day, but he got most of his counting stats in terms of fantasy in that second half, got like a couple late touchdowns, one to Godwin, and I don't know who the other one was to, and then Jaden Daniels, who wasn't doing much. He was doing okay moving along, but by the end he was running the ball. Actually, I think he got over 100 yards, or he was close. He had 70 yards early in the game, but he scored 2 touchdowns, lost his helmet a couple times. The fear for him is that he's a running quarterback, but he takes big hits, and he's not a big guy. He survived today. He got the stats. I think he finished with 28 points according to our
Yep.
studs and duds.
he had four touchdowns, almost 300 yards with 4 touchdowns.
Yep.
He did pretty. He had 300 total yards because he had 21 rushing yards. And that
No,
other
he had
receiver,
84 rushing yards I have here.
84
Daniels.
for Daniels. I'm sorry, I was looking at Baker. Sorry.
Oh.
Yes, Daniels 88 rushing yards with 2 touchdowns. Okay.
So we have our 2 main rookies here. We had Daniels in a loss with monster points. We had Caleb Williams in a win with the worst amount of points, the biggest dud of duds. So yeah, that game was there. And what was the other? Oh, the
Dallas.
Yeah, the last game here was Dallas and the Browns. And my goodness, we keep hoping for Deshaun Watson to come back. And this guy, I was the biggest fan of his when he was in Texans as a player. I had him on a team 3 or 4 straight years before he wasn't in the league for a little bit, and then you had him as a value as a Browns chance for him to return, and he just hasn't done it. I don't know. This game I was watching less than the other ones because I had less at stake, but his passing percentage was awful. He was running a little bit at the end, but he was in the game too late. He was going to get hurt. I was surprised he didn't get hurt. He was just running scrambles at the end of the game because they were desperate, and he was taking big hits when the game was out of reach.
He had 2 interceptions as well, so it's he's done. I think if this team wants any sort of chance to get to the playoffs and have any sort of run, I think they need to put Winston in. I think Winston can pull the team together and give them the edge and the spark that they need. If Deshaun's talent was still there, I don't think it is. I think something's going on mentally. All of his stuff off field.
He looks disinterested. He looks disinterested.
Yeah, the football is not his main. It doesn't look like it's his main thing anymore. So I'm okay with them benching him, eating the money going on. I thought Cleveland was going to be a Super Bowl contender these past couple of years with the teams that they put together, the defense they put together, but I'm done with Deshaun.
Their defense looked great, but like with any defense, and again, especially early in the season when these guys aren't in full conditioning mode, you can only be on the defensive field for so long before you just get worn down. And I have to put a little update here as we have Kyren Williams just scored for the Rams, taking points away from my Detroit defense. But all being said, let's release that Kyren. Why did that not play? I don't know.
Release the Kraken.
Nice. I don't know why that didn't play.
There you go.
That's upsetting. Oh, I know why.
Release the Kraken.
I appreciate your rendition, though.
Was that?
I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. Was that an offensive play or was that a kick return?
Oh, fair question. No, it was a running play from the goal line area. Nice job.
Right.
All right, guys. So, the best player for the Cowboys was Brandon Aubrey, who had 21 points. As he was a Mecha Stud today. He did awesome with big kicks, long kicks. Ezekiel Elliott got in the end zone. Jake Ferguson left the game with an injury. It was just the Cowboys. Usually they beat up on bad teams and don't do well against good teams. So it's hard to say if Cleveland is considered a good team. It was on the road, but they, by the end of the game, dominated the scoreboard against the Cleveland Browns today.
Yeah, and CeeDee Lamb, for being the second, third, fourth, first overall pick in most people's drafts, not even getting 100 yards, not getting a touchdown, 5 receptions. He did have 10 targets, though. He led the target share, so he's just got to do a little bit better. I didn't see the game, so I couldn't say if it's majority was him just not making the catches. But if he's going to be a top 3, top 5 pick, he's got to produce.
Well, we can see right now 2 of our holdout receivers in Jamar Chase and CeeDee Lamb, at least early in the season, did not get the numbers you would hope for a first-round receiver. There's a lot of time left. Things can change, but we need to remember this and make a mental note when we talked about do these holdouts affect their season-long prognosis or even their at least early season outlooks. And right now we have one data point, so we can keep that in mind going forward here.
All right, and that's the wrap for the games that have been played.
All right, guys. Now we're going to get into our very early waiver wire thoughts. Was there any injuries that caught your attention or something that you might consider picking up their backups or even just top performers they didn't realize were going to be on the field so much for early waiver wire thoughts?
Honestly, I don't have any early waiver wire thoughts outside of my own team because I was really focused on what was going on with my team. I think that with Justin Fields playing, if you've got, well, he's already gone. Never mind. You've got, no, I honestly don't.
Well, I would say that the last report I saw is that he's fine. That they were up by the end of the game, but Walker did come off with a little. It was just a tinge, and you could see when he got tackled. That he looked over the sideline real quick and came off, and he didn't play after that at all, I think, if not very limited. So Charbonnet got all the work, was not nearly as effective as Walker, but just saying if there's going to be any time missed, it was definitely Charbonnet getting the carry. So just keep that in mind. Put him on your watch list so you know who to go if you get that news. Right when you see Walker's missing time, you know who to get because you already have that stored in ready to go. Also,
right. Well, I do have one thing. If you are sitting with Mark Andrews on your team, you might want to think about replacing him with Isaiah Likely. Likely came on strong last year too. He had some big games, ups and downs. He wasn't consistent last year, but that game he looked like a stud.
Yeah, he looked very good. So yes, Likely should be picked up regardless. Obviously, it depends on who you have, but he's at least he's someone you got to look at right now, and he's not a shot in the dark. He's going to play no matter what, and he just might be leading the target share depending on the health and or capabilities of Andrews at this point.
Exactly.
Also, we have to talk about Jordan Love getting hurt there. They say Malik Willis is looking to start. And this guy, I watched him because I had Derrick Henry last year and the year before too. Malik Willis is awful. He is honestly, I think, the worst NFL player I've ever seen. I'm not even joking. And it's not about his skill set. He can run. He can arm. He would come in for Tennessee. They'd bring him in on like a 3rd and 1 to do like a wildcat, and he'd fumble the ball. Like, I'm not even talking about like missing a play. Like they go to hand the ball to Henry and he'd fall over. Like he came in the other day, one play through an interception. This guy, I don't know what he's doing. He like not just doesn't succeed, he like fails beyond, like it's like he's playing for the other team. He doesn't get a lot of run, but when he does, it's like the worst thing ever. Gets sacked for negative 16 yards, fumbles, snaps. If you have him on your team, are you gonna have him play? And he played a lot for Tennessee last year. Before they got decided to go with Levis, they put him in when Tannehill first got hurt. He's bad. He can't do it. Or he hasn't been able to do it as of yet. And his one snap this year. Now I know it's coming in cold, but I
heard. I know. I hear you. I heard a rumor though. He was actually drafted by the White Sox this year. And then he said, "No, I don't want to play for a bad team." So he couldn't make it on the White Sox, so he's there. So
he might be the starter. I don't know what that's going to do to the running game. I know it's going to hurt the passing game. I'm telling you, it was awful for Derrick Henry. When you were 3rd and long, because you fumble a snap every third, he would fumble every 3rd snap. I'm not even joking. It was ridiculous. So this is bad news. So I don't know if they're going to look to get somebody else, make a trade for Tannehill, for example, find someone like that. Trade for Flacco, bring in Phillip Rivers. I don't know. Bring in somebody in. Matt Ryan might get a call.
Matt Ryan's.
All right. So I think that's it for early waiver wire thoughts right now. Luckily, there weren't too many injuries this week, or at least ones that are automatic, pick up their backups. I didn't see anybody who was on the field who, not due to injury, who played more than I thought. Maybe Adonai Mitchell, but he didn't really connect, but he was running on the field a lot. That's the only guy I could maybe as a wide receiver target.
Yeah, and Njoku also got a lot of targets for Cleveland, but again, that situation, I wouldn't even mess with their receivers.
I think he left with an injury as well, though.
He did, yeah. Okay, because Jerome Ford was getting a ton of targets or a ton of yards for receiving. So I would just declare that situation altogether until Deshaun's out.
All right, guys. Well, if you want the latest news, go ahead and go over to wingmanfantasyfootball.com/game-day. That's where I go to get all my game day news. On the left side of the page, you can see there's a news aggregator, and it updates pretty quickly, maybe a couple minutes behind. But if that is not, I did the wrong website. Let me go to the other one. I put the wrong thing. That's wingmanfantasyfootball.com. Let's go to wingmanfantasyfootball.com/game-day. In the drop-down menu, you're going to see how this works right here. The drop-down menu, you're going to go right over to the game day page. And on the left side, you'll have news from the aggregator. On the right side of the page, as it loads, you'll have Twitter feeds from Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, Pro Football Talk, and all around the NFL. So those will give you more up-to-date news bits from people who are hurt. That's where I first saw the arrest for Tyreek Hill this morning. It'll take a minute to load here as it's in the player here. Also, though, in the middle of that page, the inactive list. Come on, you can load, right? The inactive list will play there for you. Better not click it. Anyway, so you get the inactive list on there, and on the very bottom of the page is also the weather for the cities that have the stadiums for these NFL teams. So go to NFL.com/game day to get your game day news and notes right there. Also, you can go ahead and go to wingmanfantasyfootball.com/YouTube to get all of our YouTube content there. So keep that in mind right there. So I'm pushing a lot of buttons. I'm a little distracted here. So with that being said, guys, don't forget you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn Radio, YouTube Music. You can find all of our video feeds on wingmanfantasyfootball.com/YouTube, also on wingmanentertainment.net/podcast. Go ahead and leave a like, hit that notification bell, and subscribe. Go ahead and leave a comment in there, and you will get into our next mailbag segment. Thank you guys so very much for watching. So with that being said, may your glasses be full, mine is empty, and your mugs stay frosty.
And remember, there's always week 2.
There's always week 2. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. Thanks, guys.